Warning, the following podcast is brought to you by dads who are still figuring out how to fold a fitted sheet. Welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast.
Hey, welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast. I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm joined today by Bobby Lewis.
Hey, man.
BJ Foster, and together we have 44 kids and a whole lot of questions.
Every episode we're getting more kids.
It's more and more. Yeah.
It's really just 9.
Yeah.
Just 9.
Yeah. You guys, question for you.
Mm-hmm.
As we dive into today's topic. Growing up, would you say your dad was talkative or quiet? Too talkative, too quiet? I've thought about this, and my dad was very quiet, and he worked really hard. He'd come home at night and he would be behind the newspaper. And if you wanted his attention, you had to knock on the newspaper, which he loved. No, he did not love it. And so I think my dad, the great thing he never said a mean thing to me, ever. But there wasn't like, how was school today, buddy? Like, wasn't that piece. And I'm not slamming him. It was just a different time. But I would say my dad was too quiet. What about you guys?
My dad was a little bit of a Jekyll and Hyde. Like, he was very introverted, very quiet. I mean, we could be on a golf cart together for 4 hours and not have a lot of conversation.
Were you trying to have it with him?
No, I mean, it was fine. What it was fine. We'd play chess and we'd talk a little bit. You get a couple drinks in him, and then his extrovert side, and then he's the life of the party. And so it was a little bit of both. Like, he would even, he'd come home and get his dinner and retreat back to his room. Kind of
like take his dinner to his room.
Yeah. And some of it was, he had a 2-hour commute every day. And well, we lived right out. We lived outside of New York, and he commuted into New York City, and he would get up at 5 a.m. every day. So he was exhausted. So he'd take his dinner, eat, and then fall asleep. And so, but yeah, so it was a little bit of both.
Yeah, my dad didn't talk very much, not because he had nothing to say or didn't want to talk. He just wasn't a real talkative guy. And in fact, I can count on one hand the number of times I've seen him speak on a telephone. In my life, growing up in his house, he just never, and I tried to explain this to my kids, that the phone once was connected to the wall with a cord. And I was like, yeah, just maybe twice in my life, I saw him stand in the kitchen on the phone, and it was usually, oh yeah, hang on. And he handed it off to my mom, and then he'd walk out. Just not a chatty guy.
This whole silence thing as dads, it's a little bit tricky because, I'm always the first one to say, pause, weigh your words, slow down. But sometimes silence is communicating something else. Not like I'm trying to say the right thing. It's something else. And it can communicate 3 things. Today, we're going to talk about being distracted, being dumbfounded, or being disengaged. That's the kind of silence we don't want to have as dads.
Of any of those 3, it's probably distracted for me. Disengaged, I really don't want to be that. I'm trying to always be engaged with kids, and I'm not really dumbfounded, but maybe distracted would describe me of those 3.
Mm-hmm. I would say distracted and disengaged and dumb, not founded, just dumb. But yeah, I think kind of all those first 2, distracted and disengaged, I think definitely are kind of mine.
I would say distracted, obviously, ADHD boy here, would be distracted, and then dumbfounded. I mean, like our kids, and they allow me to talk about it, but with anxiety and depression, like there are so many times going, I don't know. Like, I don't know what to do with this. And I literally felt stunned not knowing. So how do we break the silence of this? Let's unpack a little bit what distracted, dumbfounded, and disengaged looks like.
So when are you most distracted as a dad?
All the time. All the time. Again, with ADHD, I have to be very careful. And so I have to have boundaries with phones and different things. But it becomes tricky. That's a tricky thing for me. And what I end up missing when I'm distracted, the information I need to love my kids well. Like I'll miss, what time are you leaving tomorrow? I don't know how many details that I get wrong, and it communicates you don't care because you don't know. But this one's probably, as we think about this one's probably the toughest one for me.
Yeah. I've been thinking through this, honestly, because I don't know. Like if you go to a store and you're spending money, right? This costs $40. You give all $40 to the thing you want, right? You don't give $37 to it and then you give $3 to something over there you don't want. You give all of your money to the prize, the thing that you want. When it comes to attention, in my mind, I'm like, I'm spending my time like I'm spending my money, right? I'm giving my time and my focus to the thing that I want the most. And so I've been trying to wonder, am I really ever truly distracted, or am I just so focused on too many things that I'm not able to give my full time and attention to my kids? And I don't want that. So in that sense, am I ever truly distracted? I don't know. I know that I don't spend the amount of time I want to spend with my kids. It's. I've been thinking through this distracted term lately. I want to give 100% focus to my kids when I can, and I find that hard sometimes.
I think for me, it's gotten worse as my kids have gotten older. Like, I feel like I was more engaged when they were young, and then, particularly in those middle years of like ages 5 until 11, 12. I kind of feel like now that my kids are teenagers, they kind of go off with their friends and they go off into their own little kind of worlds and that kind of thing. And then I get into my phone and then they come back and they want to engage with me. And I'm just sort of like, no, I'm, playing this game where I own a pizza shop and I'm doing all this, and I'm realizing I'm doing all this work at this pizza shop that's fake that I own. Right. And they've been in the room now for 20 minutes.
You're getting so into it that it's got your focus.
Yeah.
It's locked
we put
you
the
in.
link to the pizza shop app in the show notes.
Ted likes this idea.
Oh, you should see how many restaurants I own now. Yeah. Like, I finally had to get rid of the game because I'm like, I'm working too hard. It's like I'm working a second job at this thing. But yeah, I just sort of, I feel like, gosh, it's when they reemerge back with me out of their friendships and, I'm really missing opportunities there. And so, but what do you guys think, like the fallout of this whole thing, I kind of think, what's the fallout of being distracted? And at best, you're missing an opportunity. And it's kind of like what I'm talking about. Like, my kids come back down, they come out of their rooms or, whatever. And, they come back from hanging out with their friends and I'm missing a chance to connect at best. At worst, I'm communicating that they're not important.
It's so true. Unfortunately, what you're saying is so true. I saw a guy in the airport and he had his kid on FaceTime, I guess with his wife's phone. And he's scrolling through his phone. Like, I can't even do FaceTime with you on the screen for looking at mine. We'll put those pictures in the show notes. No, I'm just kidding. We'll blur his face out. But it was one of those moments where I thought, whoa, what is that communicating? Then, and again, it's not a judgment at that. Well, it's a little bit of judgment on that one. That was, whoa, that's over the top. But he hide it better. But it's, the distracting thing is so damaging.
Yeah. Well, that's distracted dad. The second kind of silence that we sometimes have as dads is the dumbfounded dad. That's basically the guy who's just totally stumped, has no idea what to do. He's confused by something his kid has asked or said or done. And this is interesting. You said this is one that you might resonate with sometimes. I think a lot of times as dads, we just don't have the words. We don't know how to communicate what we're saying. We don't necessarily know how to fix the problem in the moment. And we struggle to put our thoughts or feelings into words. If that's you, then you might be the dumbfounded dad sometimes.
It's so true. And I think, sometimes when I encourage, husbands to affirm their wives, and they're kind of like, you're the speaker, you get paid to put words together. And I think for some to say, affirm your kid or ask questions, we realize that we're asking some of the dads that are listening right now a lot. That's feels like not a part of a natural thing and not just your presence. It's great, but it's worth working for. And a lot of times it's not nearly as difficult, as we've been led to believe.
So the dumbfounded dad is sometimes the guy who just doesn't know what to say. Can you think of a time when that happened to you where your kids are like, Dad, I need help with this, and you just didn't know what to say or what to do?
Absolutely. And one of my biggest regrets is how I would respond to not knowing what to do. When my daughter first started having panic attacks and, I'm trying to talk her through it or, encourage her or whatever, she was just panicking, literally. Yeah. And there were a couple of times I would go, I can't deal with this right now, or I don't know what to do. And I would just walk off. And then my other son, like when I would get angry, he could argue with anybody, and he was great. And we would get into these arguments, which is so dumb on my part. And then I would say, I need a minute. And I would walk out. And I've talked to both my kids about these things. And my oldest son says, I thought you were avoiding things and just trying to get away. My daughter said, it made me feel like a burden. And man, to hear that makes me emotional even thinking about it. But that throwing the hands up, I don't know, I can't deal with you right now. Boy, I learned that is communicating a lot. What about you guys?
No, I'm pretty much not.
Yeah, you write articles. You've written, 3,700 articles for allprodad.com. We'll put that in show notes.
Yeah.
Only to BJ's articles will we link.
Well, I haven't really had that experience either. But it's not that, well, no, and I don't think that's necessarily weird. I mean, many dads probably would, but I don't know, like for some reason, maybe it's because my kids are really little and their problems are a little smaller. Maybe that's the thing. When they get older, maybe I'm going to bump into some of that more often. And I don't know if that's true of all dads.
If we're still in this podcast, we're going to be excited that he does, right?
Yeah.
We're going to go, he finally doesn't know.
Boom.
Yeah.
No, I really do think that there's a difference between a kid who's having a panic attack and a kid who's like, I can't find my shoe. Like there's different layers to problems. And so if you're a dad who maybe doesn't feel dumbfounded all the time, maybe wait. Like there will be a moment that's coming where you're like, I really don't know what to do to help you with this. Doesn't mean I don't care. I just don't know. You love that word pause. Maybe that's the pause moment, you know? I haven't had that yet.
And when your kid you said your son gets emotional.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Are you ever feeling dumbfounded in those moments?
Sometimes I suppose I'll get to the point where I'm like, I wish this was not something I had to deal with right this second, because you're making this a level 10 problem and it's really a level 2 problem. And so I suppose you could say I do get dumbfounded in that moment because it just doesn't rise to the same level of urgency for me as it does for him. But that's when I get down in it and say, all right, well, I guess I got to pretend this is a level 10 for me, even though it's not. I have to match your emotion. So if you categorize that as dumbfounded, then maybe I have had those experiences. It just depends on how you phrase it, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, and yeah, I was kidding. But I do think I've worked jobs in the past where you're working on a high level of expertise where I felt like I didn't know anything. And I would say to my manager, like, what do I do here? And he would say, you don't need to have all the answers. Like just be willing to go find them and say, okay, I don't know the answer to that. I'll go find it. And there is something to that. Like there have been thousands of times, particularly when my kids get emotional, that I'm like, I have no idea. I can't solve this, or I don't know how to solve it, or I don't even know the words. But maybe there's a part of having that job where I'm a little bit like, okay, I don't know. And I'm okay with not knowing, I don't know how to help you. And there's something that is a good model for our kids in that. Like when you're able to kind of say, I don't know, but this is hard. And I'm sorry that I'm sorry you're going through this. And we need to let ourselves off the hook that we don't need to solve everything and fix everything. And, in your situation, it's like, yeah, this is super intense and something has to be done. But it's okay in the moment to just kind of say, and probably beneficial to our kids to say, I don't know.
I don't know, but we're gonna figure it out together. Yeah. What gives them permission not to have all the answers either, right? Because they're not gonna have all the answers either. I like that. Well, and I love the way as we talk off camera things, when you talk about how you speak to your kid, and I think you use that approach a lot with like not coming in too hot with lectures. I'm way too hot to fix kids, and I think a lot of dads can relate to this. Like, if you just listen to me, I've got all the answers, and I think that's a great approach. And what it does is like, you're not silent anymore. Even when you say you don't know, you're not being silent or using it to manipulate or get your way.
Well, there were a lot of lectures until I realized they weren't working.
So do you remember a moment when you realized that they weren't working, or was there a pivot? Yeah. Like what happened that makes you go, I don't know? My
son got bullied we were at a bounce house place, and he got bullied by these two kids. They came in and roughed him up and kicked him out of this little area. And he came to me crying, and I said, "You want me to go over there?" And he's like, "I just want to leave." And, he was like 6, something like that. And so I was like, "Okay, we'll just leave." And he was in the back seat looking out the window, and we were driving home, and I was just telling him, "Hey, next time this happens, do this, this, and this. And, this'll, and you could see he wasn't doing this with his hand, but he just, and I sort of realized in the moment, my goodness, like he just had this really hard thing happen. And I'm telling him all the things he should have done. Oh. Like I'm piling on the sense of shame and guilt. Like it was almost like there was a little piece of wisdom that hit me in the moment, that how bad I was doing. And so I just stopped and said, "Buddy, I'm really sorry that it happened. It shouldn't have happened to you. You didn't deserve it." And he started sobbing. And I was like, gosh, I just have to change the way I do this. And it hasn't been perfect.
It was helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, it was helpful.
When I think about dads listening right now, learning from our mistakes.
Yeah.
Right. To go, oh, that's right. I do tend to lecture my kid.
Yeah.
That's good, BJ.
Yeah. So we've got the distracted dad, the dumbfounded dad, and then there is the disengaged dad. And this is the dad who handles all the essentials, but nothing else. He does the bare minimum, but really not the heart to heart engaged with their kids. And we put this question out to our staff and asked them to kind of weigh in on this subject. And one of our staff members had this to say. She said, "My dad was never really involved, so he wasn't talkative with me through my childhood. When he would talk, it would completely miss the mark and wasn't quality conversation, even though I knew he really wanted it to be. At the end of his life, he said one of his great regrets was that he and I didn't talk and we didn't have an open relationship to communicate well."
Oh,
Gosh.
And that's heartbreaking. Mm-hmm. That's heartbreaking. It was something he wanted to do, but maybe didn't know how to do. It sounds like. And how many dads can relate to that? Like, I want to do this, but I'm distracted and dumbfounded and disengaged. And so, we don't want to do that. So
there's some dads who are disengaged because here's someone who was completely motivated, but had no idea how to do it.
We obviously don't want to do that. We would never want our kids to grow up to be able to say that. So dads, let's get to the good part. Like, how do we make sure that we're none of those things? How do we do that? We got to take some action steps. Number one, if you're a distracted dad, what do we do, Bobby?
Yeah, I think the first thing to do, if you're distracted, you talked about playing the pizza game, put the phone down. Like, that's our biggest distraction in life. I think the TV is your enemy. The phone's your enemy. You were talking about the paper with your dad. Like, these other things that aren't your kids, they become distractions. So put down the device.
I deleted the game, by the way.
That's a great step. I mean, if you're using the phone all the time for work or emails, okay, then remove the one thing on it that is causing the most distraction. That's a good tip. The second thing is make eye contact. It makes a huge deal when your eyes lock on your kid. They know that I'm literally putting my focus on you eyes to eyes. I can't even try to put my focus somewhere else because we're locked in eyes to eyes. And then repeat back what your kids are saying. If you find yourself getting distracted all the time, when you repeat it back to your child, they know for sure you're not distracted. You heard it. You understood it, you repeated it back, and then schedule some connection time. And my kids and I have been doing that quite a bit. We've tried to set out little pockets of time, and sometimes it's 20 minutes, sometimes it's 5 minutes, whatever it is, but it's one-on-one time. Recently, we built a new chicken coop at our house because we've got 5 chickens against my will. And so we have to have a little home for these chickens, and the old one was falling apart. So I intentionally brought my son out to the garage and said, "Hey, help me screw in these screws so that we can get the chicken coop looking just right." And he thought it was great. And while we were there, we chatted. Okay, why do you use this particular drill bit? Why do you put these 2 pieces of wood together? Why is this important? And it was just a little thing. But, while we were talking, I was eye contact with him. There was no phone around. We weren't doing anything else. It was just, we're doing something together. There's nothing else in the world but this right now. And so if you find yourself distracted, that's a good thing that you can put into practice.
It's good, Bobby. It's important. The next action step, if you're a dumbfounded dad, embrace, and BJ, you've already said this, embrace the I don't know. It is a freeing day to not have all the answers, but your kids still know you're interested. And again, you can find those answers together.
I think it's also a lie when you put off the idea that you know it all. Like your kids are going to see right through that. Like it's better to say, I don't know, than just come up with some nonsense just to make it sound like you know everything. Just to give an answer, just to give your opinion, it's okay to stop and say, you know what, sweetie, I don't know. And I don't know what to do in this moment. So let's walk that path together. Let's figure it out.
So the action step with the disengaged dad. Number one, you need to start with just your own state of fatherhood and just acknowledge where you are. I know a number of dads who are disengaged and unabashedly disengaged, unapologetically disengaged, but they would also describe themselves as great dads. And I just want to say, you're not a great dad. If you're disengaged, you're not a great dad. And so you need to ask yourself the question and really look in the mirror. Okay, am I engaged or am I disengaged? And there might be times when you're engaged and times you're disengaged, and you need to figure out when you're disengaged and why you're disengaged and how to not be anymore. So next, you also have to ask your kids open-ended questions. And sometimes that can be hard. We don't know how to do it. You go to imom.com, you go to allprodad.com. We've got a number of conversation starters that have a ton of open-ended questions listed. We've got a Q&U app that you can download where we refresh that and give new questions every week. And there's tons of questions on there. But give your kids an opportunity to talk, open up. Get to know them. What makes them tick? Follow up one open question after another. And finally, you have to be in connection with their feelings. And this is something that I know that you have studied a lot, Ted.
I have, and I didn't know to study it until my kids were older, right? It was like, whoa. And so one of the things that the research shows with our kids and with our spouses, it's when we acknowledge the emotion and the topic, it's really soothing and powerful for them. I remember my dad, and this was way back in the day and people were spanking, but I remember my dad would say, if you'll stop talking, I will stop spanking. And I would not stop until I felt like I'd said what I needed to say. And so I think it's so powerful for kids to say, hey, here's the emotion, here's the topic. I can tell you're really frustrated with your sister. I can tell you're really sad that we are moving. And it's not that you have all the answers at that point, but they just know that you know, and it's soothing for their brain. It's soothing for all our brains, right? It's soothing for us to know that. And it's so powerful for our kids. And it keeps us engaged with not only what's going on, logistically, but also emotionally with our kids, which is for a lot of us dads, good grief. It's not an easy thing. But when we start practicing that, it becomes easy.
It communicates that you care.
It does. Absolutely. And we know you guys listening, you do care. And so that gets us to our pro move of the week. The next time you find yourself distracted, disengaged, dumbfounded, replace your silence with a question. And again, we have so many of those. And this could be as simple as, what do you think? It doesn't have to be complicated to kick off, some good conversation.
For sure.
You guys, it's always good hanging out with you. Mm-hmm. And as always, thank you for listening. We know that you and your kids will be glad that you did.
Thanks again for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. Behind every episode is our amazing team. Producer, Haley Mawat, audio and video editor, Buck Buchanan, and production coordinator, Corey Walliff. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. So remember, if you have more questions than answers, then you're probably in the right place. See you next time.